Welcome to the Cake Therapy Podcast, a slice of joy and healing with your host, Dr. Altricia Foster. This is a heartwarming and uplifting space that celebrates the transformative power of baking therapy. The conversations will be a delightful blend of inspirational stories, expert insights, and practical baking tips. Each episode will take listeners on a journey of self-discovery, emotional healing, and connection through the therapeutic art of baking. There's something here for everyone, so lock in and let's get into it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Cake Therapy Podcast, your slice of joy and healing. So, with Cake Therapy, our aim is to bring you interesting guests, to have interesting conversations about bakers and cake artists alike who are doing this work, but they're doing it from a place of purpose and passion. And today's guest is a wonderful slice for you. His name is Dr. Lincoln L. Alexander. So let me tell you about this guy. So he's a scientist-turned-pastry chef. He's a multi-award winning food and cake artist. He's an author, and he is the owner of Flower House Cakes. And if you're a baker, yep, you saw that cake. He just recently had this mega ultra viral cake. So he's here with us today. His award-winning couture cakes have been featured in publications worldwide, such as Essence, The Knot Magazine, Mona Lucci Bride, Black Bride Magazine, Whimsical Wonderful Weddings, The Bee Collective, Hello Beautiful, Grand Rapids Magazine, Our Detroit Magazine, and so much more. Listen, I got breathless reading about, all this man's accolades, all right? So he comes from a place where he's helping his mom decorate cakes in his childhood home to now running this wildly successful business. Lincoln Alexander is making his mark in the cake industry. Welcome, sir.
Wow. What an introduction. Thank you so much, Dr. Foster. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, listen, big up yourself and
Yes,
welcome. Yeah. So let me tell you, I can only go into my patois, my native tongue, because I know he understands.
Okay.
So Lincoln is also Jamaican, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
you know me, I would be so hurt if I was born anywhere else but Jamaica. So welcome
Listen,
again. Big up yourself. I'm
big
happy
up
to have
yourself,
you here.
Jamaica Proud. Yes,
Yes, of course. As I was reading your bio, from scientist to pastry chef, it sounded just like me.
Right? That's exactly what I said. I said, wait a minute. This sounds just like me.
Yeah, man. So I'm really excited to talk to the male version of Altricia.
Yes.
We met by happenstance on Instagram. You found me. He said, this unicorn is here. And I can see where you found me interesting because our lives really parallel each other so much. And I'm really excited that you reached out. And I felt an instant connection with you on Instagram.
Yes.
And I feel like it's a thing with Jamaicans first to have that instant connection once they recognize that they're from the same native space. Right. But then you were much more than that. And I appreciate you for reaching out and having these, formidable conversations with me thereafter. So thank you.
Yes,
so let's talk about Lincoln. Tell me about how is the family doing? How are you doing? It's cold as hell, and I know it's cold in Detroit right now.
It is cold in Detroit. It is freezing out here. But as expected, I mean, it's midway through January, so we're expecting this cold weather. But all is going well. Family is well. As I said, this art of mine I love that you asked about the family because it's so family inspired, so family based. My mother is probably my biggest cheerleader. And we'll be listening into the podcast too. So I got to keep everything right, because she'll come back and try to correct me. So, but yeah, everyone is doing well. As I said, just so fortunate, so glad that I just out of chance, I just came across you and I said, wait a minute, there's another unicorn out here. How is this possible? How did I not know this? And an amazing artist as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I feel like we were meant to meet.
Yeah. I know, I do believe so. You know, sometimes you meet people and you know, because there is something instantaneous. You could have like
Mhm.
acquaintances and friends for a long time, but then you meet this one person and you know there is a purpose in that meeting. And
Exactly.
yeah, so I definitely agree with you there. I think we had that connection. So you
Yeah.
mentioned mom and
Yes.
like baking, yeah, cakes and baking with her have been a prominent part of your life, Lincoln, you know, from a
Definitely.
very early age because of mom. So tell us about that. Share with our guests, you know, how that
Yeah.
relationship and that connection is.
Yeah. So definitely. So I like to call myself a generational baker. My grandmother was a
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal baker, and she passed it down to my mother. My mother, by trade, was an
Yeah.
accountant. You know, us Jamaicans, we have many jobs. She was an accountant, but she
Yes.
also ran, a small cake baking and decorating business out of our
Mm-hmm.
family home. And so, being the last of five kids, I got into trouble quite some. I was bored,
Yeah.
didn't have much to do. So, my mother would put me in the kitchen with her. She said, "Oh, you want to act up? Well, come act up in the kitchen with me." And so,
Mm-hmm.
she would have me like tinker around with stuff, mix up bowls of this and that. And I just started to appreciate the art of baking.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day she was taking a cake decorating class, and she came home and she started showing me some techniques of how you make roses. And so I was piping roses with royal icing. And then one day I was left alone to my own device, and there was a cake that she had baked. And I decided I was going to decorate it and surprise her. So when she came home and she saw what I did, she was floored. She couldn't
Mm-hmm.
believe that I had picked up so much skills just watching her.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how this whole magic began. Is watching my mother, just learning from her, and she's been my sort of sensei, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
throughout the years. And as I said, she's one of my biggest cheerleaders. I think I'm doing everything that she wished she could have done, had she had the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's like when we look back, or even now, we're living some of the dreams that our parents had for themselves. So I'm really excited
Right.
that we get to give her that and even continue to involve her in some of the spaces and the things that you do. So
Of
kudos to you.
course. Yes. And I always big her up. Everything, every magazine I'm in, featured in, whatever, I always say big up to my mother, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, man, it's true. You have to
Yes.
definitely wherever we get a chance. So, as you were in the kitchen back in those days, Lincoln, tell me, what did you notice about yourself that indicated to you that you had a deep love for, you that as you were developing cakes, that you had a deep love for this part,
Hmm.
this career. Well, not even this career, maybe a
Right.
hobby at the time.
Yeah. I think, it instilled so much discipline. And I didn't realize that just baking and stuff required so much attention.
Hmm.
You're off by just one small measurement and the cake won't rise, So it taught me so much discipline that I used throughout life. It
Hmm.
also helped me to refocus my energy. As I said, I was the last child out of five kids. And my at the time, my parents didn't have much expectations for me. They wanted me just to do well, but all the
Yeah.
pressure was off because my brother, all my sisters, they all had to do something. So for me, it was
Yeah.
just like it gave me something that I didn't notice in myself because there wasn't a pressure there. But
Hmm.
baking really helped me to define who I was going to become,
Okay.
because again, it brought in that discipline that
Hmm.
I think I really needed. And also it gave me the passion, because it spoke beyond just me, because my
Hmm.
mother would tell me the stories of my grandmother baking, and
Yeah.
how cake was such a pivotal part of our culture and our upbringing,
Hmm.
that it became just something so important to me. That's what really instilled that passion.
Yeah. So do other your other siblings bake? Any of them? Do
Not
they
one of
take
them.
this up?
Not one of them. Not a single one of them. I have children. The children don't want to bake either. It's just me.
Yeah,
I don't know how this happened, but
listen, yeah, but then I as you were doing that, I tell these to the girls, in my foundation is when I started baking, it helped to kind of foster some form of communication with my own mom to be able to have conversation.
yes.
did you find that in the kitchen with you and your mother as well? Do you think
Yes.
that actually transformed you, and kind of set you on the path?
Yes. And you know what? I think really my siblings must have been jealous because this one thing actually brought me very close to my mother. And even to today, we're very
Mm-hmm.
close. And I think it's that line that we've built with baking and that
Yeah.
has really brought us close together. But I think I grew a stronger appreciation for my mother because she was so multifaceted. I
Mm-hmm.
was so just enamored by her skills
Yeah.
that I think that appreciation really grew our relationship more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so that's cool. But you know what I found fascinating on your website? You tell me that, well, I read, they
Mhm.
didn't tell me directly, that you've been like baking for government officials since you
Oh
were 15.
yeah.
Like, what kind of bragging rights is that? A lot of us
Yeah.
can't say we bake for government officials since we were 15. Well, tell me that. Tell me.
Listen, as I said,
Yeah.
it's thanks to my mother because my mom was big in politics as well. I mean, as
Oh,
I said, she's
okay.
multifaceted. So she used to work on campaigns in our local government, and she would always talk about her baking. It was always her
Mm-hmm.
passion, no matter what she was doing, was always her passion. So she would
Yeah.
say, well, you have this big campaign coming up. Let's do a celebration cake. Or when a local government official won the election, she made the
Mm-hmm.
big cake that celebrated that big win. So
Yeah.
she always brought me in. She always made sure she included me. She always say, "This is my son. He also bakes with me," you
Yeah.
know. And so it made me feel good. Be like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I could do this." And so it really gave me the confidence to go out and find my own clients, so to speak. You
Yeah.
know. But again, it's because of that nurturing that happened at home with my mother.
Mm-hmm. So recognizing that you could bake for, I would say, individuals in the upper echelons of
Hmm.
society, right? Did this kind of was this a natural progression of things for you in terms of a career path? Is this what like did you realize you were good then and thought that you could actually do this?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think
Okay.
so. I knew it was a passion. It became more of a hobby. My parents
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to go to school and do something, they always, West Indian parents, they want you to do better than
Yeah.
what they did. So, they wanted me to go and get a science career, in which I did. I remember one time I said to
Mm-hmm.
my father, I said, I want to go to culinary arts school. He said, culinary what? I said, culinary arts school. He said, to do what? To
Yeah.
learn to, he's like, to learn what? He said, you already do it. What you gonna learn? I said, but there's more to learn.
Yeah.
So they really fostered higher education and some of the harder sciences, which I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it took, when I'm thinking back, I think it took me making a cake for a local couple
Mm-hmm.
that was published in a magazine.
Okay.
And I think that was the first time that I realized that this is something I could really pursue and be well at,
Mm-hmm.
because I had never been in a magazine before. I mean, that to
Mm-hmm.
me, that just seemed like, who am I to get published in a magazine?
Yeah.
But when I saw the cake in there, I think it gave me that confidence that this is something that not only my family sees,
Yeah.
but others are seeing that I have a value in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that. And I think that was the same, I would say, trigger for me,
Hmm.
or the same space of validation. It's like 6 months into me starting to bake, like magazines were seeing me. So I could definitely make that connection with you, seeing your cake in a magazine and getting that validation that it's actually good enough for
Right.
you. And it was funny that you mentioned your dad asking you questions like, what you going to college to do, to learn to cook?
Right.
And it's like having that, like, again, having that this Caribbean background where our parents have this tendency to want to prefer conventional,
Hmm.
career paths for us, and pushes us towards the sciences because, okay,
Right.
they said that's gonna get you out of poverty. And what's fascinating is that your mom recognized that you were good at baking, that you loved cakes, and she still wanted you to pursue this degree, whatever degree it is, as long as it's a college degree. Do you think that your decision to go for higher education was to assuage, what your parents were saying, because you did mention you wanted to do culinary arts to your dad prior.
Mhm.
So did your educational path, the one you traveled towards education and higher education, do you think you just did that to satisfy what they desired of you?
I think 100%.
Oh.
100%. I I was a child that I don't think I really applied myself. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think again fostering. I being the last child, I was a little unruly. So, there was no expectation, but I didn't have that much confidence. And
Yeah.
I really have to attribute that confidence back to that nurturing in the kitchen, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really foresee myself becoming a doctor of public health and publishing and being a Fulbright scholar at these big universities and all this stuff. I never aspired to that. That was
Yeah.
never, I would have never thought I'd be doing that, or even to be
Mm-hmm.
a dean today of a university. That'd be me,
Unheard of, right?
Lincoln, Lincoln. And still to today I have family members who just like, they're shaking their head like, I can't believe Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
you know but I think I did it to appease them. I think I
Yeah,
really did, but I also knew that I was not going to give up my passion at the same time. So throughout
absolutely.
my education, throughout my career progression,
Mm-hmm.
I always remained dedicated to my art, my cake artistry.
Yeah. As like you're mentioning, like Lincoln is
Mhm.
now the dean.
Right.
Lincoln is a doctor of public health. So here's where, like, listeners, if you're hearing, like, it's not Altricia, it's Lincoln here. This is all him, okay? So this is where I really find like our journey really does parallel. I
Mhm.
have this degree in virology, I have this booming career in public health, um, and we are bakers.
Right.
For me, I find like when I bake, I bring a lot of my science. I do have the left brain, right brain going at the same time. My cakes have to be neat. They have to be, I'm so calculated in the kitchen. How has your career in science impacted your the cake side of Lincoln, if any?
Mhm. I think the very analytical part of me has come into play in many, many occasions. I think the way I take risks with some of my designs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about a few that have come to mind right now. Like I did this wedding cake that I hung upside down in a castle. And to
Yeah.
me, I mean, it took a lot of engineering to think about how I was going to do this, but just the way you have to be so detailed in your science um, career, your science passion, is the same
Mm-hmm.
type of thinking that you have to bring into cake design. How
Yeah.
things go together, understanding how things go together, understanding how one color can impact another. It's the same thing with looking at disease and looking at cause and probability, or looking at the etiology of something. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. You're using the same type of concepts when you're baking or when you're designing. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely tap into that other side of the brain a lot when
Yep.
I'm creating.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, like, we're left brainers and right brainers because we're
Uh-huh.
doing great at these two things, in tandem. But tell me, how do you do it? How does how does this baking thing fits into your conventional career path, and how are you doing
Mhm.
both and doing both so well?
Someone asked me that a few years ago. I think during the pandemic, someone asked me like, "How are you doing both of this? Like, how does this even work?" And I always say this: people have hobbies, people have
Mm-hmm.
um, extracurricular activities that they do. Mine just so happens to be cake.
Yeah.
So when my colleagues are going to their bowling club, they're going to this club, that club, or intramural sports, I'm going home to go blend something. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it's almost like a way of life, just like you would
Yeah.
incorporate exercise or something into your life. I've incorporated this into my life, and I've prioritized it as something that I need, that is going to
Mm-hmm.
provide for my own mental health and well-being,
Yeah.
because I know I have a stressful job. You know this too, being in this world of science, it can become very stressful. And if you
Absolutely.
don't have an outlet that is going to help to provide some type of balance, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we know the negative effects that can come from that. And so for me, this
Yeah.
is my balance. This is what the
Mm-hmm.
passion that I think provides me with the mental, emotional stability that I
Yeah.
need, that kind of takes me away, separates me from my stressful career.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did mention, like, when you go home, are you baking out of the home? Are you a home baker,
Yep.
full-time home baker?
Yep. So I have a cake studio that's attached to the home. And so I also try to keep it separate from the actual home itself, because
Mm-hmm.
as you know, you don't want to put yourself into another stressful environment.
Yeah.
So I keep everything kind of separate. I have the home, I have then the studio, and it just allows me to kind of compartmentalize and
Mm-hmm.
access when I need to.
Yeah. You once said that good baking takes place in the comforts of your
Yes,
home, right?
that's my motto.
Yeah.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I firmly believe that there's a different experience when you're baking in a
Mm-hmm.
home. I see baking as being so, I don't want to get too deep, but so spiritual.
Yeah.
Like just being raised in a home that had so much baking.
Mm-hmm.
Just the feelings that you get. When I'm baking, sometimes I feel my grandmother with me. Sometimes when I make a specific cake or pastry, it
Mm-hmm.
brings me back to a memory of my childhood that is very positive.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's so spiritual that you don't necessarily get that if you're in a sterile environment, industrial kitchen and all that. In the
Mm-hmm.
home, I think I produce my best
Yeah.
because I have that supportive emotional environment with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see that. And is this why? Because you have this core memory of baking at home with your mom,
Hmm.
that Flower House, is now taking on a similar modality because it's like really your comfort zone
Right.
of sorts, right?
Right.
I can definitely see that. So I mentioned Flower House, and I
Yes.
think I mentioned it once in the intro, but we're gonna talk about it. Like, first of all, when was Flower House formed? When
Yeah.
was it born?
I mean, Flower House has been around. It's been around for, gosh, over 15, 16 years. But I only incorporated the business back in 2016.
Okay.
And I think 2016 was a pivotal year for me, because that's when I decided that I was going to do this and put this skill of mine more in the forefront.
Okay.
So it always existed, but it existed kind of in an auxiliary fashion. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to
Mm-hmm.
fully claim it,
Yeah.
but in 2016, I said, I'm going forward and I'm going to claim this. And I
Yeah.
incorporated it. So it's been around since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And since I went public with it and incorporated, it's just blew up. It just started blooming. Right.
You, you don't say. It's blooming.
It just
Okay.
blew up.
Yeah.
To my
Yeah.
surprise. To my
Yeah.
surprise, it just blew up.
Yeah, man. It's doing very, very well. Flora House, when you said that you didn't want to claim it,
Hmm.
what was preventing you from owning and claiming it?
I mean, I think looking back now, I think there was a fear. There was a fear of failure,
Hmm?
because I have done so well in my science career. The thought of starting something more official was
Yeah.
scary, because I didn't want to take a chance. I always have my parents in the back of my head tell me, remember, this is a hobby. You're a
Yeah.
scientist. This is a hobby, you know? So I didn't want to necessarily claim it, but I
Mm-hmm.
took that chance. I don't know what changed within me, but back then, by 2016, I said, I think it's time. I think
Yeah,
it's time.
absolutely. And I'm glad you made that decision and deciding that it was time for you to claim it, right?
Hmm.
So Flower House is Formers Incorporated, and you've
Yes,
claimed everything about this
yes.
passion of yours and this talent or this gift of yours. When the media attention started,
Mm.
how tell me about Lincoln the person. How
Yeah,
did you feel? What did that make you feel? How did you manage being blown up per
yeah.
se?
I mean, that took a lot to get used to, because before any media attention, I only had
Mm-hmm.
that one magazine publication that kind of gave me that push to move
Yeah.
forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it was tough. It was tough because I wasn't comfortable being in the media, being in social media and showing my face. I've always just shown my work, but never had to show my face. And so it took a different level of building a confidence in order to be comfortable with it. Because once the name got out there, a local magazine contacted me right away.
Yeah.
The Grand Rapids magazine, where I was before in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it's a big magazine for the region. And I was nervous. I was very nervous to be in there because I said, well, I know I want to claim this business, but now if I get in a magazine, I really have to claim this business.
Absolutely.
And what happens when more and more people get to know who I am? Do I have to expose more of myself? And like how much of me do I have to give? That's what I didn't know. I'm like, I got so caught up in trying to figure out how do I maintain me separate from the business, also not interrupt what I'm doing at my university, because I have a public career as a scientist and a dean. So it's like, how do I keep these different things separate?
Yeah.
So I struggled a lot in the beginning.
Would you walk away from the public health career for the baking?
Wait, who's going to be listening? Would I walk away? I don't think I would have to walk away, but would I reprioritize? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I would. I think it's grown beyond a passion now. It has always been a passion, but I think it's grown beyond that. Now it's so incorporated into who I am and in my life.
Yeah.
That I can easily see that. And I've been asked many times, like, why are you doing this? I filmed a show on Disney, and I was talking to one of the producers, and they're like, we just read this bio that says you're a dean. They're like, what are you doing that when you do this? Like, why? And then it just, the question keeps coming, why, the why. And I think part of this is culture. I mean, we grew up having, many skills, many jobs. I think about my grandmother being a teacher. I hear she was a nurse. She was working at the post office. She was a seamstress.
Yeah.
We have many jobs. I'm like, for me, that thought that you can only have one thing, it's foreign to me.
Yeah, it is foreign. It's a foreign concept to us.
Yeah, it's very foreign to us. So to walk away, I don't think I necessarily have to walk away from it, but I think I could reprioritize it and move this to the forefront. Yeah.
So the show you mentioned on Disney is it Foodtastic?
Yes, it was Foodtastic.
Okay. Yeah, want our listeners to know, right? That he mentioned Disney, it's Foodtastic. And I also want our listeners to know that in 2021, Wedding Day magazine named you and your company one of the top bakeries in the Midwest. Okay, so listeners, trust me, this is not no play thing. This is like a real thing.
Right? A real things.
Real thing. This real thing we're talking about.
Yes.
So just to kind of shift our gears a little bit, right? I saw that on Instagram the day when I scouted you. When we connected,
yes,
is that you said my art is my medicine. My art is my medicine. My art, my baking is, I think, like I tell my husband all the time, like it's intercalated in my DNA at this point. It's what I actually need to survive. And that is why, because like when I found this baking thing, Lincoln, I never need this. I didn't need this drama. I was behind the scene. I'm an introvert at heart. Don't want nobody know me. Don't want nobody know my business. And then here I am with these cakes that our people are flocking to and loving. And I was doing it for my own personal survival. So talk to me a little bit, right? About how is it your medicine? What does it do for you?
It's funny because it's almost like a drug. There's been so many times I've said, this is going to be my last year. I'm just gonna walk away. I mean, there's so much going on, with family and the career and all this stuff. And this is a hobby I love, the
Mm-hmm.
passion, all this. But I'm like, maybe I'll walk away. I've been
Mm-hmm.
saying that for the last maybe 8 years,
Yeah.
and that's when I realized that this is more than just what it is, baking
Yeah.
and the cake artistry. It's medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm at a point now that it's like insulin. I need it
Yes.
to survive. When
No, I
I'm
agree.
low, I want to
Yeah.
create. It's something that I don't know how I would function if it wasn't in my life. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I've never walked away from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's there's something, as I said, it's become more a spiritual connection to the art
Mm-hmm.
than
Yeah.
it was just the hobby and all that. It's now,
Mm-hmm.
as I said, the medicine that I now need in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now
yeah, yeah.
let's see. I don't know. The next couple 10 years, the arthritis might kick in, and the knees aren't so good as they were before. We'll see what happens. But until those joints go out,
Yeah.
it's still going to be that essential medication that I need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna say like, and even then you'll find a way around it, right? You'll figure out a way to get that in. And right now for me, I'm like really baking through things because I have to, like, whenever I'm going, I'm struggling, I have to bake through things. And this is why with the Cake Therapy Foundation, I'm trying to tell women and girls that, listen, talk therapy is great, but there are other outlets, there are other art forms that you can use to help combat this or to support this talk therapy. So I'm really happy to, like, all these conversations that I've been having tells the story of how this
Yes.
culinary art form is really helping the baker to
Yeah.
center themselves and telling others that it can too become, something that they can use to center themselves. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
Hmm.
So tell me about how do you manage all of this with children? How are you doing this, this cake thing, when the
Yeah.
kids get involved, you said the people them no want to bake with you.
No want to be with me.
So
Mm-mm.
nobody.
Nobody want to be with me.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, so while I was doing the business, really growing the business, unfortunately, I went
Hmm.
through a divorce. So that
Okay.
was a traumatic time in my life. Family separation, all of that,
Hmm.
traumatic
Hmm.
time. And I realized that I could have went to other vices and other
Yeah.
things to cope, but the baking was always there. And I think the baking helped me to get through a lot of that stuff. Some
Yeah.
of the most interesting creations I've made was during that really hard time. And I think I was channeling a lot of the emotions I was going through at the time
Hmm.
through that. My kids, I have 3 kids, they're all teenagers, a lot help me. Um, they they've never expressed an interest at all in baking. I
Hmm.
don't know why. I mean, they grew up around it. They saw me doing it. They still see me doing it.
Hmm.
And actually, my daughter, she's the eldest. She and I made a cake together for the first time. She showed interest. She's almost 17. She
Hmm.
showed interest, and we made this Star Wars cake together. And just kind of stepping back and looking at her, I almost got really emotional because it reminded me of myself and my mother.
Hmm.
And I realized maybe I'm not pushing it enough. Maybe I'm not fostering it enough because the baking is more than just the baking. There's so much
Hmm.
symbolism, the therapy that comes out of it, the discussions that my daughter and I had during that baking, we would have never had before. That's why I
Yeah.
found out about this boyfriend she says she had.
Especially like the puss out of the
Right.
basket.
so, so it's just that's why I am such a advocate for this art, this creative form, because it's
Hmm.
more than what we just see it to be. It
Absolutely.
really can bring out the best in people and help to be transformative for people.
Yeah.
And I just saw how that one moment in time with my daughter and I made such a difference.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that one moment with your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to speak to
Mm-hmm.
girls and women, but not just to women and girls, but anyone with anything to overcome one, with a dream in their heart too. Speak to those individuals.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, a lot of us, we struggle to find um, passion. We struggle to find meaning, especially when we go through very traumatic things or we feel lost. I feel like this art form has a way that allows you to do a lot of self-discovery,
Mm-hmm.
helps you to reclaim how you thought you had identified yourself. There is something about this focused passion of creating that I think really makes a difference on how you can live your life in a different manner, in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I could speak personally that baking has saved my life because, again, going through a traumatic, not going in all sorts of stuff, but having childhood trauma that I experienced, and
Mm-hmm.
then going through a divorce, these things trigger a lot. And what the baking did for me was it helped me to stay focused. And during the process of creating, I'm reflecting. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making meaning as I'm making cakes.
Yeah.
So, and then having supportive people around while you're doing that is also so important,
Yeah.
because you don't even realize sometimes when you're having a discussion over making cake, you start getting so deep into something, you start having aha moments in your discussion, like, oh, I never thought about that. Just
Mm-hmm.
having the baking experience with my daughter, the so many aha moments, so many
Yeah.
things I've missed, and I realized, wow, why did it take so long for the two of us to get together and to really talk, that I realized I missed this in her upbringing that I didn't
Yeah.
realize I missed.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, it's a way of allowing a supportive an environment for us to really get to know ourselves better, get to know others better, and to help us heal. It's really, I think, that type of transformation that happens through this that allows us to heal ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And to the same individuals who are listening
Mhm.
and they want to be like Dr. Lincoln Alexander, owner of Flower House Cake,
Or
what
Dr.
is
Altricia Foster. Listen, I will continue to big you up
Thank
because
you. Thank
you're an
you.
amazing artist and scientist as well. Two unicorns
Thank
in the
you.
room.
Thank you so much. I know, I know. All right. So for the listeners who want to be like Altricia or
Right.
Lincoln, right? What is your number one baking tip for them?
Number one baking tip. I always tell folks, I used to do a baking camp for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they always say to me, well, I want to be a baker. And I said, well, here's the number one tip I would say. Find what you are most passionate about with baking. Some people it's the baking, some people it's the art, some people it's just the design. Find
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you are most passionate about with this art form, and then become an expert at that. You don't have to be an expert
Yeah.
at everything. Become an expert at that one thing. I know for myself, I'm not an expert in all art forms, but I'm a learner. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
researcher. I will find out how to do it. But I do know that I had to specialize in something. So for me, my specialty in baking and artistry is working with gum paste, working with modeling chocolate and fondant. That is my
Mm-hmm.
thing. We have buttercream experts out there and all that. Not really my thing, but I do it. So find what you're
Mm-hmm.
most passionate about
Yeah.
and really perfect your skill in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Find what you're most passionate about and become great at it. So, what is in the works for Flower House Cake? I know one
Ooh,
heap of things are going to start
right,
to do about
right.
it.
What's going on over
Yeah,
here?
yeah,
So there's a lot happening right now. So I just wrapped up filming a show, which I can't talk about yet because these non-disclosure agreements. But I just
yeah,
filmed
yeah,
a
yeah.
show that will be released this spring. So look
Okay,
out for it.
good things.
I'm really excited about it. I do have some other big projects coming up. I've taken on some really great clients. I think just with some of the media exposure, it's really growing my reach.
Yeah.
So I have an amazing project that's going to be happening in California this year. And another piece that's in the works right now is a book. And I have to say, I have to thank Dr. Foster for encouraging me, because I sat down and I read this
Cake Therapy, How Baking Changed My Life. Thank you.
Yes. And let me tell you, a great read. And I think it was very inspiring of the book to inspire me to talk about my own journey. Because I think we all have a story to share.
Yeah.
And I don't think we always feel confident, or we feel like our story is good enough to share. And this helped me to truly think about how my life experiences may be impactful to somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
tell the story.
Yes.
And tell it scared. And telling the story, telling the story doesn't mean you have to show all of you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Show the parts of you that will impact others.
Exactly.
And so tell the story. Do it.
Yes. So hold on. I started penning some things, but we'll see. We'll see how far I get on it. But I hope to be able to share something soon.
Yeah, man. Let me know if you need some insights.
Of course.
Well, oh my goodness. This has been such an awesome conversation with you today. I want to tell our listeners that, as promised, we provide, great slices of joy and healing. And I think this was an entire cake today. We've had cakes in the space, and I'm really excited. I want to say thank you again for joining us. I want to encourage our listeners to check out our foundation website, cake.therapy.org, or just listen to the Cake Therapy podcast. You can also buy us a coffee to support girls going through or being impacted by trauma in the community that the Cake Therapy Foundation is really trying to provide support to. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lincoln.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cake Therapy podcast. Your support means the world to us. Let us know what you thought about today's episode in the comment section. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you found the conversation helpful, please share it with a friend. Also, follow Sugar Spoon Desserts on all social media platforms. We invite you to support Cake Therapy and the work we do with our foundation by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, or by visiting the Cake Therapy website and making a donation. All your support will go towards the Cake Therapy Foundation and the work we are doing to help women and girls. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.